was a year ago last winter that I first accessed a website, a young evangelist, preacher from Missouri, Jefferson City, Missouri. And read a little bit about him, some of the things he was saying. It was a youth site. In fact, he has a site, which I'll probably mention again right now, called thisjesusthing.net. And Jesus said, "Follow me, I'll make you fishers of men." So the net's out there. And so welcome to Jason Patterson. Hey, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you.
The other thing I learned was that you may have spoken to more young people at youth camps this summer, perhaps, than any other youth evangelist. I mean, you've been invited back to your home camp near Jefferson City 6 or 7. How many summers now?
6 or 7 years in a row, yeah.
And so you get invited back as a speaker to young people. Now, teenagers.
Teenagers.
What's the core of your message, Like, why do the leaders keep inviting you back? Have you figured that out?
I'm not really sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what the reason is. But the core of the message that God's put on my heart for students is really a message of discipleship, really about the lifelong process
of being a disciple of
being
Jesus.
A disciple, right. The process of becoming less like you and more like Jesus.
Well, you need to be less like me, that's
for
sure.
Right, and me probably as well. But
well, particularly, I mean, you were right on. That was a prophetic word when you said and you were looking at me.
Right, but that's the message, is just to, the message of going from a selfish person to a selfless person, like Jesus.
Wow, that's a hard lesson. Now, you were out on Monday evening, you're visiting up in the area, and Monday evening you spoke out at one of our Circle Square ranches, the one that is closest to our studios here at Crossroads. 100 Huntley Street is just east of Brantford on Highway 53. And you spoke at the campfire. I'd like to have a little listen. Now we grabbed a couple of minutes, I think, or a minute or two, just at the end of your message at the campfire. Now, my grandson, Adam, he's the videographer. At every one of our Circle Square ranches, 9 ranches across Canada, we have a videographer who just shoots with his camera, everything all week, and then edits it together and sells it to Grandma and Grandpa and Mom and Dad at the Saturday rodeo. And they make quite a bit to help them operate the camp out of the sales of those videos. So Adam was shooting you with the camera. And so let's take a couple of minutes and listen to Jason at our campfire at the Brantford Circle Square Ranch this past Monday evening.
Maybe you're here today. You're sitting there, and maybe you can relate with this story a lot better than some of the rest of us. Because there were people in your life that should have been a father or a mother or that kind of a figure. There should have been people who cared about you, should have been people who loved you that didn't. And they made you feel like you weren't good enough. Maybe it's things that people have said to you, and you're even replaying those things in your mind right now, those things that people have said to you that made you feel like you didn't matter or that you weren't special. What I'm telling you is those things are not true. God made you who you are. It doesn't matter what everybody else says. It doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. You are special. Because the God that loves you made you the way that you are. Despite what we might think about ourselves, God has got an amazing plan for our lives. And I believe that you can make a choice. You can make a choice to strive, to put your efforts and your life and your energy into living out the plan that God has for your life, or you can live life your way, do it your way. You can make that choice.
Now, that was at the campfire. Now, behind you was a screen where they project the words of the songs and so on that they sing. We didn't see the fire, but obviously there was fire in your message. Now, tell me about, here you are. You've even spoken at a camp in Ireland this summer, a youth camp, and your message, as you said, is becoming a disciple, a real follower of Jesus in every way. But talk about the response. Give me maybe 2 or 3 examples, and what kind of a response do you get? Okay, the organizers invite you, but what about that 13 or that 15-year-old young person?
Yeah, the response has been encouraging. That's probably the best word for it. The response has just been encouraging because it's not an easy message. Becoming a disciple, the characteristics of a disciple, somebody who's obedient to the voice of Jesus. When Jesus calls us to maybe leave behind some things in life, not only sin, obviously, but to leave behind other things in life too, like Charles, who you had on at the beginning of the program, who had a huge trucking company, and the Lord spoke to him, called him to leave that all behind. Well, that's not an easy thing to do, but that's the act of a true disciple, someone who's obedient, someone who has the heart of Jesus, which is the heart of a servant. Jesus said, I didn't come to be served, but to serve others, and to be a ransom for many, And it's the heart of a servant. It's somebody who's willing to sacrifice. And, that's probably one of the most difficult messages from the summer, somebody who's willing to sacrifice. And, on those nights, the response was just incredible. And for a lot of the students, it was very emotional. As they were coming forward, there was a moment I remember at the camp in Ireland especially, which was a great camp. But the night that we talked about sacrifice, preaching from the rich young ruler that you referenced earlier, and students who just came forward, knelt down at the altar, and just wept before God. It was one of the most amazing moments, and it was at all of the camps, but I remember specifically kneeling down with a couple of, they were twins actually, Dylan and Byron, and they were just praying and just listening to their prayer at the altar as they were weeping before God and praying, God, make me willing to sacrifice. I mean, desperately they wanted that kind of heart. And that's what it's all about. It's about having that kind of heart before God, a heart that He can work with, a heart that He can lead, a heart that He can speak to, a heart that will follow, a heart that will serve, a heart that will consider the needs of others even more important than their own, the heart of somebody that looks a lot like Jesus. It's just incredible. And then there's been examples. I met a kid named Mike Durbin in Texas who walked 500 miles because of a dream that God put in his heart. He